Hello there friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. There's a small detail in the final season of The Bad Batch that you might not have noticed that is progressively getting worse each episode. Spoiler alert, it's Crosshair. Not only is the tension between him and Hunter not completely resolved, it seems like Crosshair has developed a very troubling symptom that no marksman ever wants to see: a tremor in his hand. We first see a sign of this ailment in the first episode of the final season, when Crosshair is still locked up in his cell on Montantis. And then in the most recent episode, titled The Return, we see the effect that this symptom has on Crosshair's shooting abilities. While doing some standard target practice with the droid AZ, Crosshair performs abysmally.
I have tabulated your shooting accuracy. Your target success rate today was at 53%, well below your average.
I mean, 53% is terrible. That's not marksman level shooting. That won't even get you past basic training in a lot of militaries. And this is from the same clone who was able to pull off this crazy shot just a year earlier with ease. Okay, maybe that's just an impressive trick shot and it's not as much about marksmanship. But the point here is Crosshair's ailment has turned him from an elite marksman to just an average soldier, which is a problem. A small commando unit like the Bad Batch, which often fights behind enemy lines without any support, heavily depends on its intel, reconnaissance, and situational awareness to succeed in their dangerous missions. When Crosshair left the group originally in the first season of the Bad Batch, Clones Force 99 had a difficult time adjusting to his absence. You guys remember that one mission where Echo has to step in for Crosshair on Overwatch? Well, he gets quickly overwhelmed, and without Overwatch, the entire team gets quickly taken out by a bunch of lowly Zygerian slavers as a result. See, it doesn't matter how well equipped or well armed you are, getting a jump on your enemy can change everything. And so while Crosshair's ability to do reconnaissance and observe enemy forces is not distinguished all that much, his ability to hit those targets has. It's even a bigger problem is that Crosshair hasn't told anyone else about this issue. He clearly doesn't want to be a liability, and because of that, he's become a liability. Anyway, so what is going on with Crosshair here? I mean, tremors in one's hand, well, that is a very terrifying symptom for anyone who knows the wide range of diseases that is associated with the symptom. Now, shakes can be caused by less serious things like alcohol withdrawal, drug usage, or even too much coffee and tea can cause it. As can stress and sleep deprivation, which I'm sure Crosshair experienced a lot as a combat soldier. But other things like low blood pressure or overactive thyroid can cause hand tremors as well. But perhaps the most scary diagnosis that is associated with hand tremors is Parkinsons, especially one hand tremoring, or one side of the body shaking. Now, I'm not saying that Crosshair has Parkinson's. He's a bit too young for symptoms to be developing, but what is important is to understand why Parkinson's causes a shaky hand. Parkinson's is a disease that involves nerve cell damage, including the parts of the brain that control hand movement. The shaking of one's hands is just the first symptom in this neurological disease, which ends up with the patient basically losing all motor function. Now, Crosshair has been through the ringer. He survived the Clone Wars, which means countless firefights, concussive forces to the head, loud noises, that sleep deprivation we talked about, also poor diet and intense pressure on both the body and mind. There's also that time when the Bad Batch literally opened a Venator-class Star Destroyer engine onto Crosshair's face. So we can add radiation burns to the list of injuries. Let's also not forget the experiments, the torture, and just general abuse he suffered after we fragged his commanding officer. Basically, Crosshair has a really long and complicated medical history that we have to go through before we can really identify what has caused these hand tremors. But I want to start out with the most likely cause. After Crosshair shoots his commanding officer, he's not just sent to an imperial detaining facility, he's sent to Wayland, where Royce Hemlock's secret facility, Mount Tanthus, is located. You see, the good doctor gets his name from a very poisonous plant that comes from the carrot family known as poison hemlock. It looks like this, and you guys should definitely avoid eating it or even touching it if you ever see it in nature, because even a small amount of this plant can kill you. Even dead parts of the plant stem can remain toxic for up to 3 years, and this toxin can even be absorbed into your skin. So what poison hemlock does to your body is it actually paralyzes your nervous system, and usually death occurs through respiratory failure. And one of the symptoms of this gruesome toxin is nervous shaking. Now, Hemlock wasn't just some bureaucrat like Dr. Krennic. Yes, he was the chief scientist of the clandestine advanced science division within the Empire, but he was also a researcher and doctor. He was probably just a cold-hearted and slightly psychopathic doctor working for the Republic Medical Corps. But then when the regime changed, suddenly Empire needed more ambitious individuals who were willing to do anything for the name of science, and that's where Hemlock comes into play. Now, Dr. Hemlock doesn't really show that much personality at all. He's all about his business, but apparently in his spare time, he likes mixing toxic gases. That's kind of his hobby. And close to the end of the last season, when Crosshair tries to escape from Mount Tantus, Dr. Hemlock gets to use one of his neurotoxins on Crosshair. What's interesting is while Crosshair is completely immobilized by Hemlock's gas, seems to paralyze his body, the doctor seems completely unaffected.
Having trouble processing the toxin. It's my own special formula. One I've built an immunity to. You, however, have not.
Yeah, so Dr. Hemlock is giving me major poison ivy vibes here. He can inhale this gas like a champ and seems to be suffering no side effects from it at all. Or is he? Well, after Crosshair's hand condition is revealed, I started taking a look at some of the older episodes, and lo and behold, look at Dr. Hemlock's hands. Look at his left one. Notice how it's always in a glove. Notice how he's always massaging that hand with his other hand. I don't think he's wearing that glove just for style. It could be, hiding a gruesome lab injury. That is definitely possible. But what's far more likely is that this is a weighted glove that helps keep his tremors at bay. It's actually something that is commonly worn by people in our own world who have hand tremors. The weight of the gloves helps keep that under control somewhat. Now, the fact that Dr. Hemlock also has the symptom and purposely exposed himself to this toxin might be good news. As mentioned, shaky hands as a symptom can lead to some terrifying and incurable neurological diseases. If Dr. Hemlock is purposely exposing himself to this toxin, it is likely that there are no fatal long-term effects from this gas. That or Dr. Hemlock has kind of a death wish, or he's incompetent, or I don't know, maybe there is some benefit that outweighs this terrible, terrible symptom. After all, Dr. Hemlock is a researcher and scientist. Having steady hands is very important in a lab setting. Why self-sabotage unless there's a good reason to do it? Now, it is also possible that this toxic gas exposure is just one of the latest environmental factors that have really messed up Crosshair's health in the last few years. During Crosshair's stay on Wayland, he was exposed to an imperial torture droid on multiple occasions. The IT-0 interrogator had an exceptionally malevolent way of torturing an individual. Instead of just causing pain and trying to scare the bejesus out of its patients, the interrogator droid used science and technology to truly understand a species' anatomy. Once the interrogator droid understood the anatomy of a victim, it would use that knowledge to its advantage. Generally, it would start a session by injecting chemicals in the subject. You had Babo 6, which was a really intense truth serum that also caused hallucinations. You also had something known as OV600, another truth serum that could actually detect when you're lying, and if you did lie, you get painful rashes all over your body. Sometimes the droid would even inject the toxin that lowered a victim's pain threshold and then target the most sensitive parts on their body. This allowed the interrogator droid to create maximum mental anguish without doing that much physical damage. It's very evil. This type of psychological torture can cause some severe reactions, especially repeated prolonged sessions. You see, when a human body is under a great deal of stress, it goes into fight or flight mode. And this causes all sorts of hormones like adrenaline to flood your body, which of course increases the speed of your heart, your breathing, and blood pressure. More blood and oxygen to the muscles can overload them and make them begin to twitch uncontrollably. Now imagine if you have been exposed to repeated torture sessions, made all that more affected by the science and research and statistics done by this interrogator droid. You have a truly nightmarish-like situation. If Crosshair is stubborn enough, and he definitely is, he'll have absorbed a ridiculous amounts of attacks on his nervous system and brain. It's possible that Crosshair has developed some serious post traumatic stress syndrome from these incidents, which can lead to flashbacks and random adrenaline spikes that can cause his hand to shake uncontrollably. This is a less likely theory though, because when we see Crosshair shaking, he's oftentimes very calm and in control of his emotions. Now, the third and equally as likely reason why Crosshair has these hand tremors is just traumatic brain injury. Just like how Parkinson's can damage the part of the brain that controls motor functions, repeated explosions, that ion thruster we mentioned before to the face, along with a variety of crude experiments and just general stress of being a commando, has probably created some permanent damage to Crosshair's brain. Whatever the real cause is for these hand tremors, I think we should be pretty worried about Crosshair's future here. This is a very dangerous symptom for anyone to have. The clones already have problems because of their advanced aging, and these defective Bad Batch clones could have even more health issues than we first realized. Crosshair's time might be running out now, which is incredibly sad because he's finally come back to his group, and though he hasn't made everything right with Wrecker, Hunter, and Echo, and even Omega, I'm sure he kind of wants to. And knowing Crosshair as well as we do now, I feel like he's not someone who is going to look away from death when it's staring directly at him. He's probably going to face it like a man instead of looking for a cure. But, you know, that's just what I think. Let me know in the comment section below what you guys think. Also, don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy. I'll see you next time.